thank you, Mila, for inviting me to speak with all your attendees and offer in any way that I can my support for your learning and teaching of restorative yoga.
Thank you, Judith. It's really an honor to have you here opening the seminar for us. I'd love to have some words from you talking about the restorative on the modern world, on like South America, Central and North America. How do you see restoring techniques?
One of the most powerful effects on our functioning, on our relationships, on our health, on our work, every part of our life is the constant stress that we interpret, we feel in our lives. The time urgency, the go-go energy. There's so many exciting, wonderful things in the world now. And we need to incorporate, I think, some internal time, some quiet time. It used to be in our countries that it was built into our cultures. It was built into our way of life. The stores were closed and shops were closed and people didn't work 7 days a week. So now it's different for us, and we are missing a very important part of human life, which is resting. I like to say that in civilized countries, they take a siesta. They take a rest. It's a very natural, what we call a circadian rhythm, to take a little rest. Our body longs for that. And it's also important that I think that we understand that resting and sleep are not the same. Because we can sleep but not be rested. So we need the definitive state of rest and the definitive state of sleep. So when we feel a little more rested, we have a natural sleepy rhythm. Often we don't rest enough, we don't take a pause, so our sleep is disturbed. It goes together.
Yeah, and talking about the difference between sleeping and the restorative, that's a good point. I would love you to clear more out. That's a question I often have from my students. What's the difference? Do I get the same thing sleeping as I get when I restore during the day?
Well, first let me say that everyone at some time or another falls asleep in Shavasana or another restorative pose because we're so tired. But the way I think of it is a bit of a continuum. So we have quiescence, just being quiet, and then we have resting, the state of Shavasana, and then we have sleeping, which includes dreaming sleep and dreamless sleep, and if you really took that continuum all the way to the end, you would be in a coma. So there are similarities in resting and sleeping, but a physiologist who had you hooked up to a brainwave machine could say this person is sleeping, this person is resting. So they are distinct physiologic states, and they're both part of what we need. So if I may say a little bit about Shavasana specifically, I don't equate Shavasana and relaxation. I think that, as you've heard me say before, Mila, that relaxation is the beginning of Shavasana. It's the first stage. And that actually, to me, Shavasana itself begins once relaxation is complete. So we need to allow at least 15 minutes for the average person to relax before they can move from the state of relaxation into the deeper state of what we call in yoga pratyahara. And pratyahara, as you know, is one of the 8 limbs of yoga presented by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra. And in the second part, or the second book, he talks about these 8 limbs, and pratyahara is the 5th one. Pratyahara is the conscious withdrawal from the senses. It doesn't mean we stop hearing the car go by, or the distant telephone ring, or the person walking in the room, but we don't dance with it, we don't get involved with it, we don't think about it, we don't spin away from it. In the second state, the second part, after relaxation and Shavasana, we rest upon ourselves, we go inward, we become an introvert with just the slightest awareness of the external world, but we have lost our curiosity about it for those few moments. We have lost any ambition to get up and to do, and we feel like all those sounds, voices or telephones or cars outside, are just so far from us. We have no desire to open our eyes. We have no desire to do anything but just float or feel heavy or whatever your sensation is. And I believe that that state is where the healing that we get from resting comes. I believe that that state is a parasympathetic, it's a state in which the parasympathetic nervous system is excited, which is a strange way to say it. But the resting, repairing nervous system, the nervous system that controls long-term functioning like immunity and fertility and digestion and elimination and growth and repair. And unless we give ourselves time living with that dominance in our body, if we're always using the sympathetic go-go nervous system, then we interfere with our ability to do all those functions. So to me, I want you, all of you who are hearing this, and to share this with others. Give your students, give yourself at least 15 minutes in a resting pose like Shavasana in order to get into the truth, get through the relaxation part. So when that's complete, you will feel a drop and you will enter into that deep parasympathetic dominant state.
Okay. Could you tell us, like, how did you, I know it's with time, it took like years, but how did you started with a Mr. Iyengar training, and then I think you kind of fell in love with the restorative practice, and then to the days today we have so many knowledge built up through the years. Like the restorative today you teach, took what, 30 years to be here with us today.
Well, I have a true confession to make, that when I took my first yoga class in 1970, I hated Shavasana. I did not like lying there doing nothing. I was impatient. All the moving poses were so intriguing to me. So intriguing that the very next day I got up and did practice. I just did what I knew. It was like as if someone had opened a door and I walked through into this state of recognition. For me, discovering yoga practice, not just asana, but the whole of practice, was a deeply felt recognition and relief. It was my hand fit that glove. So I didn't like Shavasana. I didn't like it at all. And when I started teaching, I taught it, but I didn't respect it. It took me a while to understand the importance of it. And when I met Mr. Iyengar, and he was the modern master who developed the use of props and to support students in therapeutic ways. And in the beginning there was a lot of rebellion against that. Why should we use the wall? Why should we use a block? We should just do the poses in their pure state. And his answer I'll never forget. He said, don't you use the floor to do your practice? Isn't it a prop? Isn't your body a prop for the soul? So he was the one that educated me about the use of props. But the actual connection of that and moving more into the supported poses as its own form of practice was many years ago. I was teaching a class in Canada, and it was the last of 4 classes, Sunday afternoon, and there came a great storm across the prairies, and we lost the electricity and the lights in the room. You couldn't see very well because the clouds were so dark. So I thought, okay, here, just lie on this bolster. And they said, oh, that felt good. So I said, okay, now do this on the bolster, now do that. And I just sort of made up a series because I didn't want people walking around, running into each other, falling over. I couldn't see them. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. Okay. But then I had the very sad experience of losing my twin brother. And when that happened, I could not really feel happy doing handstands and standing poses and active poses like that. So for almost an entire year, all I did was restorative yoga. To just be quiet and be still and be held and comforted by the prompts. And that's what inspired me to write my book, Relax and Renew, which I wrote starting in 1993 and which was published in 1995. So I'm like you. I am the same as you. I have doubt sometimes. Do I really have 20 minutes? I could be productive. I could get this task done. But the times that I feel the least inclined to slow down, relax, and breathe are exactly the times I most need them. The people who tell you they do not have 20 minutes to rest every day are the very people who need it.
Some thoughts, some words about the embrace between Ayurveda and restorative.
Well, Ayurveda, as we know, is the science of medicine from India, and yoga is one of its modalities. Now, when I use the word yoga, I mean all of yoga, the philosophy, the psychology, the various forms of service and bhakti and devotion and action, karma and service, and as well as the asana and the breathing, the pranayama, all of it together. And it is an interesting way to think of it. I'd like to use the example of the yamas and the niyamas, the ethical precepts of yoga. In the 8 limbs we spoke of before, the yamas and the niyamas are the first 2 steps, and it's often said they are the 10 commandments of yoga. And the first one is the most well-known, ahimsa, non-harming. If we want to practice yoga, the first thing we're exhorted to do is to choose not to harm ourselves or others. So the most interesting thing about that is to think that it also means to pay attention to the harmful judgmental thoughts that we have about ourselves, and to notice the actions that we take that support our health, mental or physical, and the actions that we don't. And so if we look at Ayurveda as a wide science of health that includes diet and herbs and all sorts of healing modalities, of which one is yoga, I think we should think equally about the poses, like restorative poses, which reduce blood pressure and reduce stress and have wonderful effects. They also have sometimes emotionally freeing effects, because we teach people to be still and quiet and introspective, and those issues, those anxieties, those worries, those fears that we spend all our time pushing down begin to let go. They begin to come out. Just like our skin sweats, our emotional skin sweats, and it lets go of things. So the practice of yoga in its widest sense is an absolute important tool in Ayurveda, and restorative is part of that. I think that the modern disease, if you will, is a confusion between busyness and meaning. We believe somehow if we're busy, that our life has meaning. And we have increasing fear about emptiness and stillness. And I have found in the last 5 years especially, newer students coming to practice cannot lie on the floor with no stimulation, no phone, no texting, no input, lie on the floor, eyes closed, still, for 5 minutes. They cannot even do it for 5 minutes. And so I think we need to look at, for our health, not just the techniques we use to cure it. Sometimes I use restorative yoga as what I call a pit stop. If you've seen races, car races, where they're racing around in a circle very fast, which is a great metaphor for my life sometimes, but when they're racing around so fast, and then they pull to the side and their team comes and changes tires and puts in gas and fixes the car really quickly, and then they go out again. So sometimes I'm busy like that race car. So I go to the wall and I put my legs up the wall and I use my restorative pose as a pit stop to keep me out there again. But I think in the best form of practice, we don't want first aid restorative. We don't want restorative to bring us from a negative to a neutral. We want to be in neutral enough till we can move to positive, and that requires deep self-inquiry about the choices we make in our life, and learning to choose and create and guard the incredible importance of self-reflection and silence and relaxation in our day, every single day.
And that takes a lot of courage, right?
It takes a lot of courage to swim upstream. But I can feel across the airwaves that you, all of you listening, have been swimming upstream a long time. So I'm swimming with you.
I'd love to ask you to just give us some words as like the first seminar ever done in Brazil, at least, regarding techniques that make you stop or slowing down techniques as meditation and restorative, for example. And just give us some words as our godmother on how to keep going and for all this sangha of restorative we are trying to put together here.
So I have two suggestions. One is a physical one, and one is a mental one, although we all know those are not separate. So I'll tell you a story. I used to be in a running club, a jogging club, and there was a man in there in his 80s who, I live in San Francisco, and he would run across the Golden Gate Bridge every day. And his name was Walt. And I asked him, I say, how do you run these long distances? And he said, easy. I start slow and taper off. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that you don't say, okay, I'm going to do an hour of restorative every day. That will last one day. So make a commitment that you're going to lie down for 5 to 7 minutes. Lie on your back, put something comfortable under your head and neck, put your feet up on a chair or a couch, set your timer for 10 minutes. Be in a quiet place, cover up your eyes, take some easy breaths, and just do that for 10 minutes. And then when the timer goes off on your phone, you may want to set it for another 10. But don't commit to an hour, because when you push hard against yourself, there is an equally opposite reaction pushing back. So you want to sneak up on it. You want to just do it. So move in the direction of it. Don't try to be already there. Another practice that I recommend to you is what I call, and you can do this all day long, it's what I call no rushing. So, and this is what I mean. You may arrive at an airport, for example, and have to go very quickly to another gate to make your second flight, and it's a long way away and you need to move quickly. So just move quickly. Don't add the suffering, the mental suffering of, oh my God, I'm going to be late, what if I miss my plane? Just calm down and move quickly. And it will change your life. No rushing.
Just 30 seconds. Do you have a dream?
Well, I have to say that my dream is world peace. That there is nothing I can imagine better than a world in which there's no war. Let's start with that. But I also know from my study of yoga and Buddhism, that needs to start with me. And so if I'm at peace, or even moving in the direction of being peaceful, then the actions I make have their intended results. Then the relationships I cultivate feed me and feed the other and feed the world. So I think my dream is to become my dream. To become that person who lives with an open heart. So I'd like to leave you with a quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. We think life is strong and love is fragile. But really it's the other way around. Life hangs by a thread and love holds the universe together. And practicing yoga and relaxation is a way of loving yourself and loving the world. Namaste. Thank you very much, Mila, and thanks to all of you. I give you my loving support for all the work you do to change the world and to reflect back its goodness. Namaste.
Namaste.